So at this point, you should be comfortable with everything that is on the screen here. And what I mean by comfortable isn't that you have a complete understanding of what a function is, or all of the different libraries that you can include, and how to reference them. My point is that you should be able to understand in a very general sense why we have this written here, and why we have this written here. Why is it that in Python we can just write one line, whereas in C++ we need 7 lines? It's because we need to import the additional functionality of printing to the screen, and it's because the compiler requires this int main function in order to know what block of code to execute first. Though I was thorough in the description of these things, that is all I want you to take away from those past lessons. And we're going to come back to those topics later to discuss them in more depth once we're a little bit more comfortable with some of the basics of C++. So in the spirit of basics, let's talk about variables. What is a variable? To put it simply, a variable is a place where we store a thing. And by putting this thing in its place, we can then reference it and manipulate it later. Let's see how this works. So I can, in this first line, just put the number 5. And this 5 is totally useless to us. It doesn't actually do anything. It just is a 5. We can't add anything to it. We can't subtract things from it. And we can't reference it later in the program. In order to do all of this, we need a variable that allows us to reference this 5 by name. In order to declare the variable, we need to know what sort of information it's going to hold. So what is a 5? Well, it's a number, and specifically it's an integer. So when we declare our variable to store this number 5, we're going to set it as the type integer. And then we can name this variable whatever we want. So we'll call it x. And then we're going to have to set x equal to 5. And so in this statement, we have declared our variable. Again, we were trying to store a number 5. So we're going to put it in an integer. We're going to name that integer x, and then we're going to set it equal to the value we want. And again, this allows me to reference my 5 later. So instead of printing hello world to the screen, I can print x. So if I compile this and run it, we can see that it will now print 5. And even more important than referencing it, I can manipulate it. So after I have declared x to be 5, I can add something to it. So I can say x equals x plus 4. Notice that since x has already been declared as an integer, I can now just reference it later without specifying integer again. And I can set x equal to itself plus 4. So this one, once compiled and ran, will give us 9. Now, once again, there are various types of data we can store in a variable, and in this case, we chose an integer. But if we wanted something that had a decimal, so if I wanted 5.6, then the integer can't store this value because of the decimal. So I need to change it to be a floating point, or float. So I can save this, and then when I run it, I need to compile it first. I get 9.6. I can also store characters, so I can say char x equals c. Let's comment this out, and I'm going to put x here, compile it, execute, and I get the letter C as my output. Another option is the Boolean, or true-false value. Compile, execute, and this one's a bit strange because it gives me a 1. So a Boolean value, when printed, is either going to be a 1 or a 0. 1 for true, 0 for false. Now, there are many different types of data types in C++. You can see some references to them here. And the important thing to know is that each type of data, so a character, has a different amount of memory allocated to it, and it also can hold a certain range of values. But what's important for today is the variable itself, the fact that we can name a certain type of value, manipulate it later, and then reference it later. So if this video was useful for you, please leave a like. It helps me grow the channel and it will help other people find the video. And again, if you would like to see these tools used in a broader context, I recommend checking out my Developer Diary series, where I am working long-term on big projects and actually putting these tools to use. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one.